Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this afternoon's webinar. My name is Candace Williams, and I'm the Director of Policy Research and Strategic Initiatives at the New England Board of Higher Education. Today, we are conducting the third of 6 state-based presentations based on our recent initiative, Upskilling New England, Bridging the Gap Between Educators and Employers. Today, we're going to share data and findings focused on the great state of Rhode Island. I'm joined by Charlotte Pizer, Policy and Research Analyst at the New England Board of Higher Education, and Amy Grabowski, who is the inaugural Executive Director of the Westerly Education Center, an innovative facility uniting higher education, business, industry, government, and community partners in the provision of workforce development and job training in Rhode Island. Amy was a key partner in the construction and opening of the facility, manages a 5 to 6 week training program in 3 trades for General Dynamics electric boat, cultivated the participation of 5 public and private universities, as well as quickened the growth of their educational courses with over 1,000 participants in the first year, and successfully procured over $400,000 in grants. She's currently managing the groundwork activities for the establishment of a second workforce development center modeled upon Westerly. We were privileged to have her participating in our Thinkers meeting on Upskilling in September, and thrilled that she could join us this afternoon as well. Before we dive in, I'll say a few quick words about the New England Board of Higher Education, or NEBHE as we call it. NEBHE works to support the 6 New England states to address common challenges and bring action to shared opportunities in higher education and workforce development. In mid-2019, we launched Upskilling New England with support from the Strada Education Network. We convened stakeholders from across the region to identify the need for upskilling and challenges related to implementing such programs, to reveal best practices in developing and delivering upskilling programs and partnerships, and to bolster such efforts with recommendations for state policy. Like I said, today we are focusing on upskilling in Rhode Island, and in the coming weeks we'll release additional webinars from partners in other New England states. You can find previous conversations with partners from Maine and Vermont on our website. And please feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A tab, and we'll also share the slides, of course, after the presentation. So I want to start out by noting that the white paper on which this webinar is based was largely authored prior to the onset of COVID-19. While the implications of the findings we'll share today have always been significant, we believe that they are even more important now. Among our discoveries, we note that the populations most in need of upskilling are the least likely to receive such opportunities. The economic shock caused by the spread of the coronavirus has only accelerated the vulnerabilities of these individuals, most notably un- and underemployed, low-wage and hourly workers throughout the country and in New England. According to Strada Education Network's regular public viewpoint survey, less than half of Americans have access to the training that they would like to receive. We have yet to understand the full impact of COVID-19 on our lives and our economy, and we also do not yet know how exactly our state and federal governments will respond in terms of financial support for education and training providers or policy on job creation. If we use the Great Recession as a barometer, we can estimate that post-secondary education institutions, particularly community colleges, will likely bear much of the weight for preparing individuals to go back to work and fill new types of jobs. In New England, unemployment rates peaked at an average of 9% in 2010, and 2-year colleges experienced an 8% increase in enrollment. Notably, this period also represented an inflection point where the number of sub-baccalaureate program completions, such as certificates, in demand-driven sectors such as biomedical sciences, computer sciences, and precision production, more than doubled across the region. It's possible that we could see similar patterns arise in the near future as the U.S. recovers from the outbreak. Surveys by NEBHE and by Strada alike show that an interest in short-term training programs is quite strong. Colleges and universities will have to display a degree of nimbleness that exceeds efforts of prior decades. They'll have to respond to the needs of a broader array of students, including adult learners, who are likely to turn to short-term online methods of gaining industry-validated knowledge and skills. And at the same time, collaboration between post-secondary education, employers, and local and state governments must turn a new page to act quickly. Mitigating the likelihood of a full-blown recession or even a short-term depression will depend on prioritizing the acquisition of in-demand, automation-resistant skills and credentials by New England's out-of-work individuals and at-risk incumbent workers. There are a number of factors at play alongside the impact of the pandemic on our regional higher education landscape and economy. For one, the age and demographics of our region call for new strategies to meet the fast-changing needs of the labor market and ensure that the region remains a top choice for people to live and work. With fewer high school graduates entering the college and career pipeline, it's important that we optimize existing human capital, un- and underemployed adults, individuals traditionally underserved by higher education and workforce training, and recent immigrants. You'll see that Rhode Island, here in this graph of the projected number of high school graduates, is represented by the dark blue line. Rhode Island's projected decline in the number of high school graduates by 2032 is 7%. This is less severe than the regional average, which hovers around a 14% decline in the number of high school graduates, but nonetheless is a significant number of people. Across the region, higher education institutions and workforce training providers and employers must work together to develop a system of learning that meets individuals where they are and allows for the continuous upgrading of skills and knowledge. In doing so, we'll be bridging the gap between the supply and demand of adults with needed post-secondary credentials. In Rhode Island, over 51% of adults have a post-secondary credential, but up to 71% of jobs require one. And when we talk about credentials in this presentation, we're referring to anything from a short-term credential, certificate, or license up through an associate, bachelor's, or graduate or postgraduate degree. The share of folks with post-secondary credentials in Rhode Island is on par with the national average. However, when compared to the other New England states, Rhode Islanders are less likely to hold a four-year degree, and they're slightly more likely to have a high school diploma as their highest level of education. The economy of Rhode Island is very diverse and requires specialized knowledge and skills, not all of which are necessarily gained through four-year degrees. Relative to the rest of the country, Rhode Island has a high share of jobs and industries related to boat building, but also colleges and universities. Yet the smaller industries unique to Rhode Island are in decline. And we see occupations requiring college degrees growing quickly in Rhode Island, particularly in the fields of post-secondary education, healthcare, and IT. The number of jobs in computer systems design, for example, are expected to grow by 23% by 2029, or 1,800 new job openings. And the average wage for these jobs is over $110,000 per year. To make sure that Rhode Island can respond to the changing mix of industries and available jobs, we need to increase access to and completion of post-secondary credentials for over 100,000 individuals. And remember that figure because we will come back to it. Despite being a small state, those with a post-secondary credential are most likely to live outside of Providence and Providence County and in more affluent areas of the state. Rhode Island sees significant attainment gaps based on race, as much as 30 percentage points between Hispanic and white residents. What's more, the attainment rate of Hispanic individuals in Rhode Island is the lowest in the region at just 20%. Prior to the onset of COVID-19, 1 in 2 adults in Rhode Island perceive the need to pursue additional education, the highest rate in the region. The impact of COVID-19 on people's employment status is also changing the way they're thinking about new education and training options. According to Strada, 56% of Americans have either lost their jobs or had their hours or income reduced. 1 in 3 believe that they would need more education to find a comparable job. And for millennials and Generation X, this belief is most pronounced. This mirrors more general trends about the perceived need for career advancing education in Rhode Island. The demand is particularly strong among young adults, and we might infer that they're responding to labor market demand. There's also variation by attainment level, with the perceived need for additional education highest among those with voc tech training. We believe that because those with voc tech training experience have strong connections between education and employment, they value additional education more highly than their peers. Now, you remember that an additional 100,000 Rhode Islanders must complete a post-secondary credential to be prepared for available jobs. If we apply this survey data, one can count over 145,000 individuals without a post-secondary degree who perceive the need for career-connected education. This means that given the right mix of education and training opportunities, employer partnerships, and marketing, Rhode Island can be well on its way to meeting its attainment goal. Digging deeper allows us to confirm additional hypotheses. As population growth among white people slows, education and training opportunities must respond to the needs of Black and Hispanic individuals. 1 in 2 Black people in Rhode Island see the need for additional education, while 4 in 5 Hispanic people do. Furthermore, individuals working in manufacturing and healthcare are apt to see the need for more education and training. So one of the questions that we're hoping to answer today is, how do colleges and employers alike respond? There's a lot of opportunities to set new conditions to support Rhode Island's employers, particularly in the manufacturing sector, and build upon Rhode Islanders' high demand for career-connected education and training. Even at this stage of the pandemic, we see that many conditions linked to the recommendations in this white paper already exist. For example, we've learned that individuals can adapt quickly to digital methods of teaching, learning, and working. Current and prospective students' expectations of higher education are changing, and deficiencies in our labor market have been revealed such that the need for transparent education and career pathways are newly clarified. And lastly, we can no longer ignore inequities faced by people of color and low-wage hourly workers. We believe upskilling is a key strategy to meet the needs of current and future members of our workforce, our employers, and our higher education institutions. So with that, I will turn it over to Charlotte to discuss the findings of our white paper. Charlotte, you're still on mute.
Right, okay, thank you, Candace. So let's dive a little bit deeper into upskilling. In the fewest words, to upskill is to gain additional or alternate skills that will translate to advancement in the workforce. The Aspen Institute's Upskill America initiative defines upskilling by 3 key opportunities and outcomes: employer training, credentials, and college degrees. Upskilling via employer training refers to employers providing or partnering with education institutions to provide retraining and upskilling opportunities for incumbent workers. Upskilling can also take place by way of attaining a credential of value or a verification of an individual's skill level by a third party like a trade association. Lastly, an individual may upskill by attaining a college degree, ideally with the financial assistance of his or her employer. Upskilling is important across sectors in terms of involvement and outcomes. For workers, upskilling can directly translate to increased wages and or a promotion. For employers, upskilling is an important tool to enhancing work product and retaining workers. Additionally, it is more cost-effective to upskill an incumbent worker than to recruit a new employee. Educators benefit from upskilling because by forming partnerships with employers, they not only assist their students in job placement, they also make themselves a more sustainable institution because through innovative program development and successful partnerships with industry, institutions widen their application pools. And as Candace mentioned, this is especially important in our current circumstances. Policymakers play a crucial role in upskilling through creating policies supportive of the aforementioned entities and, most importantly, our labor force, but also by creating policies that support the creation and sustainability of upskilling programs. Policymakers open educational opportunities to more citizens who, in turn, make greater contributions to our economy. The next question is, where should upskilling take place to be most effective? According to the Strada Consumer Insights data, New England adults are extremely likely to enroll in education and training through their employer. Again, this was pre-COVID-19, so just keep that context in mind. The next most desired source of education is community college, then four-year college. So if employers develop upskilling programs or partner with education providers to develop upskilling programs, workers are more likely to take advantage, acquire higher level skills, increase their wages, contribute more to their employer, and increase output, become a better consumer, and so on. In September 2019, NEBHE, with the support of Strada, convened a thinkers meeting. At the meeting were representatives from colleges and universities, employers, both large and small, state policy, industry associations, workforce boards, and other stakeholders. Through robust discussion around best practices and opportunities in the upskilling space, we came up with 3 models for upskilling, which can, of course, be tailored to individual businesses and institutions of varying sizes. As we've emphasized, the implementation of these models is of increasing importance in our current circumstances. Partnerships between employers and education providers will be especially pertinent when we begin to, or as we have already, begun to return to some sort of normalcy and rebuild our economy. So the first model is in-house upskilling. This model works best for large employers with significant resources to dedicate to building and sustaining education and training programs on site. Companies like Amazon and JetBlue have strong in-house upskilling programs. But a bit closer to home, Chimbro Institute in Maine is an exemplar of this in-house model. Chimbro offers high school internships, safety development training, professional training, craft development skills development, apprenticeships, leadership and professional training programs, and more. All of these programs are, quote, tailored to invest in the long-term development and retention of talented, capable leaders at all levels of the company. I should also mention that Chimbro also does external training for other employers in the area. The second model is a direct employer-to-institution partnership. Here, the employer seeks the partnership of an institution, or vice versa, to develop a curriculum or program which can be customized or is already existing, that directly correlates to the employer's skills gaps. The Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Massachusetts partnered with Bunker Hill Community College to do exactly this. This partnership, called the Employee Career Initiative, delivers free prerequisite courses for careers in allied health. Beth Israel developed these courses with Bunker Hill, who offers them on site, meaning workers do not have to leave the hospital to take classes. This model can work well for mid-sized employers and community colleges that have the capacity to develop customized programming when necessary or travel to deliver on-site programs. The last model is an industry-led partnership where an intermediary, which can be a workforce board, an industry association, or the like, helps to connect employers and educators and build and sustain the partnership and subsequent upskilling programs. The Eastern Advanced Manufacturing Alliance, or EMA, is an excellent example of this. EMA is a collective of manufacturing businesses in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, and has established itself as a nonprofit organization and intermediary for member organizations and partnered education providers. NEBHE reviews its community college partners program offerings to ensure they align with current manufacturing industry needs. It also advocates for supportive policies for the advanced manufacturing workforce pipeline and is a resource for best practices for employers and education providers. Since integrating employers into the educational pipeline is not a practice universally implemented by educational institutions as of yet, we've narrowed the role of employers to play into 4 concrete arenas. The first is assessing workforce skills gaps so that employers may articulate accurately the openings for upskilled or upskilling workers. The second is to form partnerships through one of the models previously articulated or build an education program in-house. The third is to invest in or elevate existing high-quality, effective upskilling programs. With this investment comes the responsibility to advertise upskilling opportunities with employees. We learned from our Thinkers meeting that we hosted in September that many employers who offer tuition benefits do not actually track who is using them, and much of the time, employees do not know that the benefit even exists. On top of that, tuition reimbursement is not always the most helpful benefit because it does not mitigate the upfront cost of college. So we have to rethink this more traditional benefit and elevate the more innovative models that we've touched on. Lastly, employers should standardize their skills language. This will be most effective when developed in collaboration with education partners so that job skills and course outcomes are aligned in such a way that the pathway from an education and training program to a job is clear both to the student, to the institution, and to the employer. We're now going to move on to some recommendations for state policy solutions. In our white paper, we articulated 3 buckets of policy recommendations at the delivery model level, the partnerships level, and at the state policy level. But for the purposes of this webinar, we'll focus on those state policy recommendations. It's important to note here that we created these recommendations with an equity lens. And in fact, we believe these recommendations actually facilitate increased equity and inclusion in upskilling programs. So the first policy recommendation is to implement policies that require validation of prior learning or expansion of prior learning policies. By recognizing and documenting prior learning, whether through work experiences, military experience, or prior academic experience, education providers shorten time to in-demand credentials, which workers can achieve through upskilling programs. We're going to focus on college credit for heroes, which is specifically for military veterans, because we believe this model can be translated and scaled well for non-military individuals. So college credit for heroes was initiated in 2011. And it is intended to maximize awarded academic credit for military experience. CCH is built on 2 primary pillars: an extensive network of participating schools, which is currently at over 50 colleges and systems in Texas, and the development of accelerated curricula. The Texas legislature allocated $5 million to launch the program in 2011, and it was made permanent in 2015 through SB 806. CCH has completed thousands of evaluations of military experience, which has resulted in an average of 25 college credits per veteran. Codification of this initiative has significantly increased participation of institutions, which has in turn increased student participation. The second policy recommendation is for policymakers to implement incentives for employers to prioritize upskilling as a key business strategy through state-issued grants or tax breaks. An example of this is the Massachusetts Workforce Training Fund, a program out of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, to which organizations can apply for grants up to $250,000 to train current and newly hired workers in topics like project management, software and IT skills, and machine setup and operation. The model works well because not only is it government supported, businesses must pay membership dues and for-profit companies automatically pay into the fund. So there's widespread knowledge of this resource. The last policy recommendation is to develop accessible, transparent, and stackable pathways so that all stakeholders can easily understand how upskilling programs translate to promotional structures and or post-secondary credentials. In 2019, Vermont enacted H533, which requires the Department of Labor to collaborate with post-secondary education and training providers, government agencies, and employers in order to recruit adults into educational training programs, locate funding subsidies for participants, and map pathways from high-value credential programs to high-quality job outcomes. There aren't results quite yet from this initiative since it was enacted so recently, but we will provide those to you when they become available. So that wraps up our portion of the presentation, and we are going to turn things over to Amy Grabowski, who is the director of the Westerly Education Center and an exemplar of all that we have talked about.
Great, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to tell you about the Westerly Education Center and all that we have in regards to upskilling and workforce development opportunities in Rhode Island, specific to the Education Center. And hopefully on NEBHE's next webinar in another state, Rhode Island is marked as that exemplar that we saw on the previous slides. I'm going to highlight today some of the direct employer and institution models and industry-led models that Charlotte was talking about. Next slide. The Westerly Education Center is a public-private partnership that opened in 2017. It was originated from a private philanthropist that wanted a community college in downtown Westerly and was willing to donate funding to build the beautiful building you see in front of you. The state at the time said this is great, but we don't want just a community college, not in the negative connotation, but that they really wanted the partnership with workforce development and an employer. And so we were very fortunate that General Dynamics Electric Boat was willing to be that employer, and we created what you see in front of you today. And the Office of Post-Secondary runs the facility, which is also a really neat experience because it allows us to include the Community College of Rhode Island, the University of Rhode Island College, and RISD all have programs within the building. And as I like to call it often, it's a hotel for colleges, but really driven with higher education and workforce development. We also act as a conference center in order for our businesses to also do their own trainings. What's unique about the site and how we operate it is it has to be self-sustaining. So though the Office of Post-Secondary is a state agency, the entire operation is run as if it's a nonprofit in a self-sustaining manner. We are also extremely excited that we opened a Pearson test site in May during COVID, and we have now already administered, or will be administering by the end of this month, over 300 tests in just the first 2.5 months. And that was a testament to show that we had that need in the region. We are able to, within the building, do from GED to workforce development to higher education. So all of it's there, which when you have an individual come in and maybe they're working to complete their GED, they can see what's in front of them and that there are other opportunities to move forward in. We have served over 3,500 people in 3 years in either higher education or workforce development program. Next slide. We are truly a unique and collaborative space. We have many state agencies that work to put the entire education center together, from the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training through Real Jobs Rhode Island. We also work with the Eastern Connecticut Workforce Board that Charlotte and Candace mentioned before in their manufacturing program. And we work with Electric Boat and 25 other businesses. And as previously mentioned, the Community College, University of Rhode Island College, and credit-bearing programs in workforce development, and RISD and continuing education programs. Next slide. So what I'm about to share with you is a big part of what we offer, the hands-on component with the General Dynamics Electric Boat. And on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that picture. That's our process technology program. Next. So our original partnership with Electric Boat has been fantastic. We trained over 1,000 people in 2 years working on their shift schedule. And what has made the partnership unique is that with the Community College of Rhode Island, we are either from 7 to 3:30 or 3:30 to midnight, and we are there to meet their demand and their need. And whether it's pre-employment, if the individuals are going to Connecticut, or it's new hire training if they're going to Quonset, we're able to absorb both models and really create an environment where the individuals are coming in and they're in a very simulated environment. There's a mock submarine that they work to build and unbuild while they're there in their particular programs. We're able to integrate high school students into programming in our second year and have, I think we're about 20 to 30 high school students have gone through the program. And then most recently have created the Boat for Women exploratory sessions So women are able to get a taste of the different trades before they apply and jump into the programs. Next slide. This is a quick snapshot of our 3 training programs for electric boat. We do pipe fitting, sheet metal, and electrical in either 200 or 240-hour programs. Next slide. The new hire profile for electric boat is the average starting salary is about $17. The average age is it's an adult from anywhere from 18 to, I think we've had students that were 65 to 70, so it really doesn't matter. And it is perfect for an opportunity to learn before they go into the manufacturing field. And what Electric Boat has also been extremely excited about is that their attrition has dropped and they're able to maintain their employees through the first year. Next slide. We're even more excited, not that the Electric Boat program isn't awesome, but we were able to create the process technology program. When I was opening the Westerly Education Center with my team, an employee from a pharmaceutical company came and said that we need process technology. And I asked, what is a process technologist? And together we were able to bring together originally 3 employers, which grew to 10 when we submitted our final grant application. And this included pharmaceutical, textile, plastics, brewing, cancer research. And we listened to them tell us the competencies that were needed. And with the community college and the amazing faculty that work for CCRI, we were able to put together a curriculum that really met their needs. And we have now run 5 successful cohorts and 78 students, and we have a success rate of about 60 to 65% placement with an average hourly rate of over $17 an hour. And we really have enjoyed watching these students go through this program because it truly is a pipeline. And so this program has further grown to support not only those industries that I just stated, but now also the water industry, and we're building out an electronics pathway as well. Next slide. This was our original grant application. This was what the career pathway was intended to look like. It became a 300-hour training. So it's 10 weeks, 300 hours. We had originally had 2 cohorts the first year, and now we run 3 cohorts a year. The community college hired the instructors and we use and their faculty to update the curriculum as we need to. And we're working to make this either have prior learning credit or be credit articulating with the community college, and are working through the barriers to get there. We intend that a student can complete the program, get a job, and if they choose to, continue to attain their associate's degree at the college. And some of these industries it will be necessary to promote within their organization. Next. And this is how we do it. First we listen to industry. What do they need? What is the volume? How can we support, and then how can we help fund it? Rhode Island is very fortunate to have Real Jobs Rhode Island, which is designed to create sector-specific employer-driven training. And these programs typically fund the curriculum development and implementation of the program with no cost to the employer or the student. We are hoping that this program will continue into the future and has created such wonderful partnerships across the state. With the employer partners, we bring together the higher ed partner, and in the case of both the electric boat program and the process technology, it was the community college. And we also are able to bring together the industry experts to really create that curriculum. And then for process technology, we utilize the University of Rhode Island to evaluate the first 2 cohorts so we can ensure that we had continuous improvement. And we also partner with our nonprofit partners to assist us in things such as recruitment and placement, as well as we also use our NGOs for case management, because what we know is that we have to provide those wraparound supports so that students can complete and persist, break down their barriers before they get into that job, and it helps them to show up. Next slide. And it's working. The governor announced about 1.5 years ago that she wanted to create another center in Northern Rhode Island. So this will be modeled after the Westerly Education Center and will be shared academic facility for the colleges to offer training, instruction, and curriculum customized for the regional employers. And it will advance employees as well as training for new and potential hires to provide a continued pipeline of diverse talent and demand career pathways, and also address the inequities in training and hiring in Northern Rhode Island, which are reeling from high unemployment rates. And because of COVID, the unemployment rates in Northern Rhode Island right now are between 23 and 27%, which is even higher than the state's approximately 17%. Next slide. And we're excited that we already have 3 employer partners in the Northern Rhode Island space that have committed to this particular project. So Fidelity, CVS, and AAA are continuing to partner and help us build out that space that we hope to be in by May or June of 2021. Next space. Oop, I'm sorry, and I think there was one more slide, but I'll just quickly wrap up by saying that in the Northern Rhode Island space, We are looking to do cyber, IT, data analytics. It will be a little bit different than Westerly in that we won't be we won't focus on trade training as much, but we'll be focused on what those employer partners need. And that, at the moment, concludes.
Thank you so much, Amy. This was so informative, and Westerly really brings to light so much of what is and will be important going forward in terms of upskilling and getting everyone back to work. So I just want to remind our audience that if you go to the little Q&A tab which should be at the bottom of your screen, you can pop any questions you have in there. But we have a couple of questions just to kick us off. Amy, these will all be for you. So the first one is what qualities of Rhode Island's higher education institutions, employers, and government leaders allows upskilling programs to launch and scale so quickly?
So again, I think Real Jobs Rhode Island has truly been a great mechanism to create those industry-specific programs. And we really have the colleges, the community college, the University of Rhode Island College have really jumped on those programs and work real hard with the employers to make those partnerships and listen to the employers and figure out the competencies that are needed so that we're producing the programs that will help individuals upskill.
Yeah, so I'm hearing key to all of this is constant communication between all interested parties, which is often difficult to initiate, as we learned from our thinkers meeting, but is obviously key to the development and evolution and sustainability of all of these types of programs.
Yeah, I think it's certainly the communication, and it's the constant. So the Department of Labor and Training having that mechanism where they already have, they've already created industry-specific sector partnerships. So if, for example, a bank needs a specific call center training or something specific to an industry, they try to ensure that it's funneling through those specific industry-specific partnerships so that if there's more than one employer that has the same needs, we're creating things at volume and at scale, and not always niche programs that might not have that same sustainability, but it has to have the constant concept of evolution and continuous improvement, because as we know, things change. And we have to be able to adapt to that change. And specifically with COVID, we know that automation is coming even faster, so we need to keep up with that. So that's just an example of something that we need to look forward, think, and continue to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. A second question for you, Amy, is what advice would you give to small employers in Rhode Island or outside of it who don't know where to start with upskilling?
So for small businesses, I would absolutely encourage them to work with their colleges, specifically in Rhode Island, certainly the community college or the University of Rhode Island, to really begin that conversation, but also to convene other businesses like them. Many small businesses have industry organizations and can create that convening opportunity to talk through what their needs are. But again, we're very fortunate in Rhode Island that we have these mechanisms and can kind of push individuals to find out about the programs that we have and have those dialogues. But it's open communication. It's talking with the colleges to see what they have, to go to their workforce branch and really work through those challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also it's important to note that taking the first step, as with so many things, is always the most difficult. And deciding to make the investment and make the effort is, it's tough, but it's, increasingly important.
It is, and trust that the state can actually help, because they can, and they can help make those connections to the appropriate institution.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just as a follow-up on the reverse end of things, how would you say colleges should strategize to engage with small businesses?
Similarly, it comes down to that personal touch, and colleges, and again, I know that our college works real hard. They have created a great workforce partnership division that it has reaching out to different industries specific to the person, and really listen to what the business needs and not come in with the solution, because we don't have all the answers as policymakers or as higher education, but we have to listen to the needs of the employers and try to marry that with other employers' needs, knowing that small businesses don't necessarily have the volume for a college to create a specific program just for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess on that same sort of trail, on the employer side, in order to accommodate college programming or other alternative education provider training, what commitments are important for employers to make that will be most impactful for workers? And by commitment, I mean, flexible. I guess this is sort of on both sides of the employer and the education provider. So these commitments could be flexible scheduling, tuition assistance, study spaces, anything like that.
Yes, agreed. So on both sides, both the employer and on the college's perspective, everyone needs to be more flexible and nimble to react to the needs of not only our adult population, but also on the understanding that the college side doesn't work quite like business. And but thankfully, most of our workforce programs are starting to work like business. So like I explained on the electric boat program, we operate on their shift schedule. So we have created the program to work just like they need it to run, so that the individual isn't surprised when they end up on the floor doing just that, working 7 to 3:30 or 3:30 to midnight, and how that impacts their family life. But from the employer's perspective, if you don't have the amazing opportunities of Rhode Island, where most of it is free, you do need to offer that tuition assistance, and you need to offer that flexibility, understanding that there might need to be some additional time for studying, or just driving to where the training program is if it's not on site.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just any sort of small commitments to say that an employer is backing their worker is so important to not only the worker to engage initially, but also to remain in the program and subsequently advance through the company. That personal touch, as you would say, is so important on that level as well.
And even better yet, if when the program is complete, if they get a higher salary or whatever the benefit is for them to complete the training or upskilling program.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from one of our audience members. They say, the programs highlighted offered hands-on, on-the-job experience. How is that being continued in a post-COVID reality?
So for us at the Westerly Education Center, we're open for business. So we opened mid-May and are very cautious with certainly following socially physical distancing. And we have we have followed all the rules for the state and have our business control plan. Some of this hands-on training can't be done remotely and will need to be done in the classroom or in the hands-on side. So we are just smaller class sizes, again, ensuring that our pod sizes are consistent, and we're not, for example, if we're running 3 different cohorts for electric boat, we won't intermingle those cohorts. We make sure that we do strong messaging, that they don't, we try to assign specific bathrooms, don't take breaks at the same time, staggered starts, just like we're looking for towards higher education and K-12 return. We have already started that return. But in some cases, I think if it can lend itself to online, then we can create that virtual programming and platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think manufacturing especially has, I wouldn't call it a contextual advantage right now in COVID, because so many manufacturing floors and training facilities are sort of already set up with social distancing on the floor. So that's certainly an advantage for those who are in training. We have one more question for you, and we will have time for a couple more if audience members would like to chime in, so please feel free to do that. But our last question for you is still thinking about the effect of COVID. What are a couple of things, in your opinion, that you hope Rhode Island can do to improve and to get individuals most affected by the virus back to work, or at least on a pathway to a better job?
So certainly invest the money. One of the biggest things that we need to do is ensure the sustainability of the programs that we've created and get more creative on the programs that we have to help individuals make a family sustainable wage while they're in a program, so they understand that it's not like, not everyone can just take 10 weeks and do a course before they get a job. They need to be able to put food on the table. And also really be intentional about wraparound services and helping to break down those barriers, such as transportation and childcare. We just have to be really intentional about our programming and support services so that we can put people back to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned wraparound services. That is such a key element to all of this, especially for workers who want to, complete their program and don't want to be hindered by the obstacles that so many people face in terms of finding childcare, especially now, and adequate transportation when taking the bus, is not super comfortable. For example, I'm just sort of thinking of my own experience, but it's so important to keep that at the front of our minds. As the academic portion is so important, we also have to think about the personal aspect of it. Well, I think we have reached the conclusion of our webinar. Amy, thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you for your insight and for the amazing work that you do at Westerly. And if our audience has any additional questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And we will be back next week to talk about upskilling in Connecticut. So if you're interested in that, please do join us.
And you'll see Rhode Island on that slide.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me today. And I look forward to continue the conversation on upskilling in New England.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.